Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of All Things Money, and today we've got, I would say, the most visionary CEO in the country as we speak right now, and someone who's dabbled in basically anything from chemicals to energy and now automobiles. We've got Kamran Kamal, who's CEO of HUBCO. Kamran, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you so much.
So, what's the future for HUBCO and the country?
So I'll say, as a HUBCO, I think we've over the last 28 years of, operations, HUBCO has been a power company. But over the last 5 years, we started diversifying. We entered into oil and gas, upstream oil and gas exploration business, and our recent foray, which you mentioned, is Mega Motors company, which has brought BYD cars to Pakistan. I think if I look at the longer term vision, we will remain primarily an energy and an infrastructure play. But I think given the Pakistan, you have to be very resilient as an enterprise. So we will continue to evaluate opportunities which are in line with what our capability as an organization is and capability as a country is, or there is a future in it. I think that's what we will continue to look at. In terms of the country, I think, alhamdulillah, we have the stability, but that stability is just what we make of it is going to be, remains to be seen, right? I mean, we've gone through a roller coaster ride in the 2022, 2023. Now everybody has survived that last round, and what are we going to make of this great opportunity after the stability that we've got? Where do we head? That is going to determine how Pakistan looks. There is a lot of opportunity, there are challenges, global contours are changing, we are navigating well. Can we continue to survive? Can we continue to flourish? That's the question that is on everyone's mind, and including mine. That's what I think about. Where will Pakistan head, and where will we take advantage or benefit of that opportunity which comes along the way?
So I would say HUBCO is one of the very few entities in the country which continues to invest rather than hold on to cash and lend it to the government and basically do nothing with it. Like there are many other conglomerates out there who do exactly the same. You've got the likes of Engro, Fauji, I'll just take names here, Lucky, so on and so forth. Why do you do that? First of all, I think there's a very high risk appetite that exists at a group level. And where do you see that kind of opportunity to continue doubling down on things?
So I say, on a lighter note, I'll say that's the only way that the company DNA has been. One way we know is just basically look at new growth opportunity, maybe for a selfish reason of the management that, the company grows, you grow. But on the serious note, if you don't grow, what else you do, right? I mean, you have to keep looking. In a country like Pakistan, where there are challenges, where there are unexpected crises that is not of your making and you have to survive, the best way to survive is to keep chugging along, keep moving forward, look at what opportunities are. And then, as I said, that being in energy has given us ample patience. And some of the things that we've looked at is the fruits of the patience as well. Oil and gas, right? So you wouldn't invest in oil and gas when you look at the declining profile of the oil and gas production profile in Pakistan. But that is where the opportunity lies as well, that the country will look at how can we increase production, and opportunities will come. Obviously, last rounds have not been something to speak of. People are talking about offshore. There could be a reset in the policy. Or a rethink about the policy, and that will create an opportunity. But you have to be there. You have to be committed to the sector that you are in, and the sectors like us that we are in. So you have to believe that Pakistan only has one way, and that is to grow out of this crisis as a nation. So there will be people who will benefit from it, and people who will benefit, there'll be something for everyone. And us being operating in a B2B, B2G kind of space for a long time, I think we feel that there will be an opportunity for companies like us. We may not be a very direct consumer or a small value consumer product company. That has its own benefits, that has its own thrill. But I think there is also a space for companies like us, which are large, which have a long-term view, which are patient capital, and the resilience to go through multiple cycles.
I mean, if anything, we need more like this which have patient capital and ambition for growth, rather than those who basically just live off treasury bills. What good is life if you're living off treasury bills? So I think you just mentioned oil and gas. There is no clarity on what the policy should be, whether it's policy consistency or not. What do we want to do? What do you think needs to be done at the policy level, such that a lot more interest can come into oil and gas in the country? I think offshore is way too expensive for us. I don't think anything's ever going to come out of it. But just even onshore, what do you think? What are the policy levers?
I'll challenge you to the other way around, right? So, because we've been very fortunate that we had SUI, we had HUBCO and other blocks, and Middle Indus has been great for us in the early 21st century. So we had every find was a 1 TCF, Zamzama, Bhet, others, right? And we've been very lucky and we've lived off it. Now, where do you go? Onshore. You go Balochistan, which is a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging, and then you go to north, and one well or two blocks have done well. But the cost has gone up as well. Now think about if you have limited resources and we are fragmented in a small companies relative to the super majors of the national oil companies, why can't we pool together those resources and conduct a 3D seismic of the offshore? Because if the reward is too big as well. Like we have seen all the major discoveries of tens of TCFs globally in the shallow and the deep offshore waters. No community issues, no security issues per se. I mean, there are, but then the dangers of operating in offshore, we've seen that, but still they are manageable. Engineering solutions are available. So I think what we could have done is we could have basically combined our resources. All the oil companies and the gas companies were to say, let's assume if the 3D seismic requires $300 million. For one company, it's too difficult. But for 5 companies, the ticket size goes to 60, right? Yeah. And that's more manageable. And when you're doing a well, that's how you look at it. So I would say that this is a really doable problem as well, because that opportunity comes through. That opportunity comes through as well, right? So if you're not going to not do a 3D seismic, how would you bring in how do you bring the international major or a minor to come and look at it? First things first, oil and gas, you need to look at data, you need to get excited, because anybody who's coming into Pakistan is going to commit capital. He needs to take an investment case back to his management, to his investment committee. And without seismic, without the preliminary data, I mean, I think these industrial concerns, the one thing about them is you need data. The rhetoric doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, that why we have lagged behind. We need to have facts, we need to have data, we need to focus on what needs to be done. And I think this is a great opportunity at this point in time. And even President Trump mentioned it, so why not cash in onto it? That there is so much excitement about this region, about Pakistan in particular. There is a lot of companies are looking at it. So what do we need to do that we are looked at it more seriously and the investment happens?
So more granular data, more understanding of the overall environment, that's offshore, at least just make it more palatable. What about onshore? Why can't we just sell more blocks?
So we have sold more blocks, but as I said that, the blocks that are now come online is a Waziristan block, Wali field for OGDCL. These are in a relatively volatile areas, right? I mean, so they are in Waziristan by itself, that it's a little bit difficult to go there, security concerns. Similarly, Balochistan, 52% of your land mass has not been particularly a very, very easy area to operate. Hopefully, inshallah, soon it will become. So these are the things. Number 3 is that I think what we need to really look at is that we have to look at the energy as an entire primary fuel to the final consumption. So you have to look at the entire value chain. What good is it if I have an 80 MMCFD find in the north and I have to curtail it and I can't dispatch it?
Or just cook food on it.
So, I mean, yes, cooking food or boil water at 18%.
Yeah, at 18%
it's a great use, right? It's a great use. And if nothing else, we were, as I said, in the early 2000s, we ran out of ideas. We had CNG. So we burnt it in the cars as well. Now, unfortunately, CNG cars don't exist in as much quantity. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I think that is an important point where we really need to focus on the full value chain. I think that's what my plan is for this interview per se. So onshore, we say there a lot more can be done if the volatility can be sorted, if the data can be sorted. There is this. So let's say we get a fine. You get some gas out of the system. What do you do next with that?
So
I think it's important to provide context to everyone who's watching how gas or any primary fuel generated can be more efficiently used at a molecule or at an electron level. We talk about this all the time. It's important for everyone to understand.
Yeah, so the bang for buck concept that if you have a portfolio and if you have additional $10, where would you put it, right? You will look at what is going to give you the best return or in terms of the best value for your investment based on your risk profile. I think we will as a country have to look at it. What is going to give me the long-term return, right? So if you find this gas, you will direct it towards the industry and those industries which are not extractive or just basing it, they have a competitive advantage. They deliver value in terms of the long-term export dollars maybe. They do some import substitution or help us achieve competitiveness in the long term as well, because let's assume there are some industries which work for the other industries or enable other industries to be competitive and those will be base metals, base materials, whatever that is, right? So you have to look at the most efficient user of that molecule to be assigned to it. Yeah. You cannot, as we talked about, you can't give it in the CNG. You cannot just give it in the household who's going to burn it in 18% or 15% geyser and is never going to turn off because the price is so low. So we really have to see that what maximum economic value, which sector, which industry, which consumer brings the maximum value. Because yes, you could give the gas to a consumer who's burning LPG at a much more expensive, and if it's going to help you reduce the poverty of that, but that can't be for everyone and anyone, right? So you have to there have to be some development goal as well, but not just a blanket development goal that we are going to give cheap gas to households.
Almost free gas at this point.
Yes.
So I mean, my favorite example of how policy is so distorted is the 50-liter geyser.
Yes.
50 liters of water that keeps on warming up over and over again. There's a gas being wasted. It takes 20 minutes for 50 liters to actually warm up. But for the next X number of hours, till there is obviously gas load shedding, that just keeps on burning and the water just always warm and no one uses it.
I think a better one is that I do remember that many people will tell you, why haven't you turned off the stove? Oh, because I don't want to use the matchstick.
So that becomes
reignite it.
So that becomes a pricing issue at this point. If it was priced correctly, and more than pricing, it's more of a policy issue as well. Why even have 50-liter geysers? Why not 10 liter? Why not 15 liters? Why not just get some solar geysers in place?
No, I'm at this point in time, I believe that if world is electrifying, what is stopping you from electrification? I mean, we have seen TV serials in our time when you used to have this heating rod into the bucket and people will use it. Now it's become a slightly more, the white goods have come that you can have literally a cabinet which moves water and there is a coil which keeps that pipe heated, and there is enough, because if you think about it, you're not going to take a shower in 100 degrees Celsius or a tea hot water. That's not what you're going to have. You're going to be, will be on your skin.
40 degrees.
35, 40, because in the summer you feel like taking a hot water bath, right? Because your tanks get hot. So I think reaching a 40 degree for water is going to take in an electric or a more efficient electric geyser much faster. And that will also increase the load onto the grid in the summers as well. Similarly, why do you need a gas heater when every year we hear about that, the gas leakages and everything? Now the inverter ACs are available. There are other appliances available which will make sure that you're equally comfortable. HVAC has existed for 60, 70 years as well, right? Carrier and others have been making, these large companies have these HVACs where you don't feel the need to have a separate heating system and a separate air conditioning system. So why can't it be one, right? It's just efficiency purpose is easier as well. You only have one device, which in winters serves you as a heater, and summers it heats you. All you need to do is you need to standardize, you need to make sure that the customer is getting value, and that can be done by smart regulation and a good competition. I think we've done in many domains. This is much easier to do. So the stoves can be electric. Other than, I keep talking about, other than the chapati and the pulka getting that puffed up,
It's a mental block at this point.
other than that, there is nothing that you cannot make. Anybody who tells you that the food doesn't taste well, then maybe people who cooked in a clay pot and on a wooden fire, that has its own taste. That has to do with the slow cooking, not to do with the way you cook it, right? So think about
It's
it.
the chemistry of it all.
Yeah, there will be some people who will say it doesn't taste well, but I think for the larger public,
Which shouldn't influence policy decisions.
that's what it's.
So essentially, what we're saying, whatever molecule is there, it needs to be used in the most efficient way. How do you get to that? Do you pick winners or do you price it well?
No, I think sometimes you have to be paternalistic, right? So unfortunately, we've stopped planning for a long term or a medium term. Long term is too long term for a country like us because we come through a crisis regularly. Unfortunately, that's been the history. But you plan for 3 to 5 years, and then you stick to it. Then you don't get fazed by any temporary phenomena, right? So you will say my policy is that I want to be the future, let's say, is digital manufacturing or automated manufacturing, right? So you say, okay, I'm going to give you an electricity at a discounted if you're going to automate your industry to a level that this is 60% robotic. It's about blue air. I'm not suggesting
being more
anything of that
future-proof
sort.
about it.
So
yeah.
you really need to look at how the landscape is going to look 5 years and how will I become competitive and how can I take that piece of the pie through my industrial policy. If you're going to go back to giving it to the same sectors which you have given in the past, and you at least need to look at the data, has it benefited us? Are there any other improvements that I can do to make sure that leakages are reduced? So what happens? Either we are very generous or we go blackout. So you say, okay, you can have anything and everything that you ask for, and then you will say, no, all the perks and the privileges, and even now I'm going to make it punitive pricing. So we are pendulum. We swing one way or the other, right? So we become very generous when our current account deficit is great. You let everyone. So this, if you've got the energy, if you going back to onshore, you have 2 finds, you have 3 finds. This is the time to think about which sectors are you going to promote, and you choose the winners.
So coming to effective utilization of gas, we say we can pick winners, and that's the right thing to do because a lot of East Asian countries have largely done that and they've been fairly successful. But another big user of gas in the country is essentially fertilizer. Now that's largely import substitution, and the farmer has stopped really getting that value out of it, but we continue to subsidize gas. What do we do there?
I think I'm not particularly, very updated with what the policy, is, but I do know that as the population grows, our demand for fertilizer will increase because arable land, that's also pushed now that we want to have a greener Pakistan. We will need more arable land to feed the people. So there are only 2 ways that you can get it. The production or the produce has to increase. Either you improve the yields, which people are doing some work, but that also has to be focused, and arable land has to increase as well. So which means the fertilizer demand. I think there has been some change, but we will need to look at what is the fuel that is available that can be used. So coal to fertilizer is I do know that some companies are exploring it. I think the pricing, whichever way it's been done, import substitution and other things, I think we really need to look at rationalization in terms of if, as you are saying, that the farmer is not getting the benefit, we need to look at how can we ensure that the benefit that we are passing in terms of the import substitution is passed on to the farmer, because any subsidy, any support, any intervention by a state is done for for the well-being of its population, not for the I mean,
For the shareholder.
for the shareholder, or not for the people who are in the value chain only. Not for the value chain only. There has to be value chain participants also have to benefit, but you have to make sure that everybody is rewarded commensurately. So that's what we will have to look at. But I think if there is a resource which is in shortage, and there comes a time when you have to decide who gets it, and as you said, pick the winners, you'll have to look at it, who delivers the best value to the overall economy, and even within the sector, you'll have to look at that, there is no one person benefiting unfairly or by some virtue of the legacy. So you have to make sure that it's a level playing field. So, but for future, I do know that until and unless we find more gas, we will have to either look at import, or we will have to look at what other fossil fuels or what other ways we can do the fertilizer.
And that's basically coal.
Yes.
We got insane amounts of coal, and the world has been using coal since forever, and will continue to do so. So, what about that? Why can't we just double down on that?
I think that again remains. We did evaluate it. I think the challenge remains the price of coal, because the parity has to be there in terms of at what price of coal does it become equivalent to the gas, international I'm talking about, or whatever my best alternative is, right? So if I can't produce or increase with the domestic gas, I'm looking at an imported gas,
Yeah.
or an imported fertilizer. So these are my parity indicators. So I'll have to look at it. One way we looked at is that the power, because coal power is not now very welcomed, so we've pretty much plateaued at wherever the coal power is. So any incremental benefit or economies of scale benefit to mine in block 1 or block 2 should be passed on to the fertilizer, so that you treat it as an infancy industry, so that they can come up, they can scale up. Because if you're going to be utilitarian and say the benefit is distributed among everyone, then they might not become competitive, and the project might not happen. I think there has been a model that, whatever the price after the phase 3 or a certain size of the mine is, that price is locked for the power, and every incremental or marginal price is given to the fertilizer, and that might actually encourage investment. And if investment is done, it will lead to a trickle the spillover effect, and it'll develop another new value of coal use, and then you can increase the fertilizer. That might lead to other downstream industries as well. Coal to chemicals has also been big, and we haven't benefited. China basically has been producing fertilizer with coal for last several decades. They have amazing coal to chemical complexes as well. And I think as they become a more and more advanced economy, they are going to be exiting, or at least not increasing their footprint into that domain. So that also leaves an opportunity for countries like Pakistan. And it's relatively, I'm not, obviously coal by itself has carbon and carbon dioxide. It's relatively emission controllable process, because you use CO2 in the fertilizer production as well. So you can reduce the CO2 that is produced in production of fertilizer from coal, rather than in case of power. So there can be, and coal to chemical is even better.
So I think that's the whole policy structure that needs to be in place, to really look at marginal prices rather than total cost. I mean, that's a fight I do basically on a daily basis at this point, where we're just looking at full cost recovery, like the lender of last resort often tries to really push down everyone's throat at this point, the IMF, I'm going to say it out loud. We really need to look at the marginal cost and how that can lead to better outcomes, because you need to work with cost curves, you need to work with demand and supply. If you do everything on a cost plus basis, everything is basically going to collapse at this point.
No, so you are going to say that, the cost plus is that you have 100 items to sell. You calculate your cost and you say every item is going to be sold at a fixed price. Yes, you might be able to sell 60, 80, 100, 20, but global companies have shown you that you and I could buy the same thing. An airline is a classic example. You could buy, you're sitting with me on an aeroplane. I could have paid $60 for the flight. For the same flight, you could have paid $160. because you bought it at a different time and you bring a different value, because I allowed the airline to plan that revenues as more stabilizing. So the cost recovery, full cost recovery, has been basically because we've not been able to get the value from the subsidized power or subsidized energy or subsidized in any subsidized product that we've offered as an industrial policy, tax breaks, and has not reaped the result. And that's when I said we swing in a pendulum. Either we were too generous, no questions
Or just
asked,
take everything away.
so take everything away.
Yeah.
Now you are in very, very difficult situation. I fully agree that we need to look at what, so the industry, there is an industry which brings a base load as well, right? That has a different value. Today you are going to look at it that if you are the supplier of last resort as a power generation company, you have a different value system, right? You have a different value to the system. So you can't treat it because the solar is 2 cents at 1 p.m. Yeah, that's true, but solar is not available at 1 a.m. So are you going to charge me 2 cents or pay me 2 cents at 1 a.m. as well? I'll refuse to produce and you'll have a blackout or a brownout, right? But I'm forced to sell at 2 cents during the day as well. So the markets take care of it. So that's how we are.
Yeah, fully agreed there, and that's where the price distortion is coming in. And I think this is one thing that I discuss with basically everyone on a daily basis at this point, that we need to really price electricity on an hourly basis right now, rather than just say there's a one price throughout the day, because that is where you really look at the value. Like, I'll give you an example. In July or August, during the day, the price of electricity, the marginal price was around 9 rupees or 8 rupees per unit. The same thing at night was around 32 rupees. This massive delta between almost, I would say, 3 times at this point, or 4 times at this point. But we just charge one price for whatever
No,
that
I'll
is.
give you even, so we looked at the data last week and a week before that. 8 days, 8 degrees Celsius fluctuation in average temperature, and the deviation from the load demand was 8,000 megawatts.
Wow.
So rather than 996, this is 888. So that's what it is. We used to have a load of 20,000, 20,500 in the last week of September. And you can look at it, and it has gone down
Yep.
to 11,000, 12,000 megawatts. That's pretty much 8,000. So that's where we are.
Essentially, the duck curve is
Duck
really
curve is getting,
pushing it
so
up.
duck is getting more anemic.
Yeah.
So during the day, it's even going down. So yeah.
And so again, you've got the duck curve, and then you have batteries coming in as well. And I think you're one of the few people who really understand that business, because my view here is, fine, you've got solar that will continue, and you will have more behind the meter installations. The curve is going to get flatter. But when the sun sets, batteries start kicking in, and we can see more and more demand going off grid and to the batteries at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m. How do you think battery playing out? In my view, over the next 4 years, it's going to be a major disaster with a lot of batteries coming in the system, and demand from the grid is going to further reduce.
So I'll say I love that somebody was saying that solar is, because we are suffering from this low demand from 9 to 5, right? So it rhymes with our office hours as well. So it's going to be 9 to 5 solar, 5 to 9 battery, and 9 to 9 base load, right?
Yep.
So that's what the split is going to be. Now, coming back to my earlier point, how do you solve it? There are price signals, there are other things, but you have to do the demand interventions. And one of the demand interventions that we need to do is electrification. Today, all global advanced economies are struggling to get electrons onto the wires, to the data centers, to whatever they're doing. There's going to be space tech, there is going to be a lot of other things that are going to happen, because human race has our average consumption as a human has increased over the last 20, 30 years at a pace which has not happened over the last 50 years before that, right? Since the internet, everybody spends a lot more time on an electronic gadget. After the iPhones, the digital phones, not the earlier phones, but now we spend a lot more time, and the iPads and everything, the kind of things that you do, appliances and cars and everything. So I think we really need to also have the intervention. So going back, we need to encourage those appliances, those uses of electric consumption, electric consuming devices or whatever, like, your way of life. And then you also have to plan in a way that, the reality will be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. people will be off grid. There'll be no demand. And where does that demand comes from? That demand can only come from industry. If you can pick winners and say 9 to 9, because I have so much power generation capability, because what people feel that the grid will no longer exist. And I keep telling people that, no matter how advanced the car becomes, barring flying cars, even the flying cars will require the rubber for the tires. Everything else can change, right?
Yeah.
So the aeroplane also has a rubber component. It flies most of the time and it's on the ground very little. So you will need the grid. How smartly you actually manage it. And that's what we'll need to do it. And I think there are three grids in my mind. One is the petroleum grid, which all the ICE cars and motorbikes and everything is using. Diesel, petrol, kerosene, everything. There's a gas grid. And then there is an electricity grid. Globally, if you look at it, I'm keeping the coal and others out. Globally, if you look at it, now the gas is being allocated to power generation.
Yeah.
Because they feel once you have power, you can literally have your entire life run on electricity.
It's a more efficient use of that molecule, essentially.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't agree with the demise of grid. Maybe short term it'll happen, like railroads, right? Now, railroads went through their boom period, then their bust period, then every big city has
It's
a
a
metro.
utility now. It's
It's
a utility now.
So it'll come back in a different role, in a modified role, but I think the electricity grid will be there for the long term.
I think when we talk about demise, it's not of the demise of infrastructure, but demise due to the sheer fiscal cost. Because again, if you don't price it right, let's say you don't have that base load from 9 to 9, and if a grid is only being used for, let's say, 50% or 60% its capacity utilization, no business can be economically sustainable at that level. So it's more about the sheer fiscal cost that will eventually move from the power consumer to the taxpayer. That, I think, is the real problem, and we may just see that accelerating over the next few years, where the fiscal costs associated with power are only going to increase if this issue isn't
No, I
solved.
think I see it as a private hands and the public domain issue. So I'll give you a very simple example. The freight from Karachi to Lahore is almost 40 to 45% higher. So if you're paying, let's say, 10 rupees per kg to move something on a truck from Karachi to Lahore, you will probably be paying 4 rupees to 6 rupees, depending on whatever the variation is, right? Why does it happen? Because there's a private player who realizes that I have to get back, right? So he has to place his truck to earn that 10 rupees, right? So he has to earn that. I used to work for Italian utility in 2007, and market was opening up, and they had coal plants running, and they took us to this trading entity that they were doing, and they said, we have a 32,000 megawatt fleet, we dispatch 19,000, we have 7,000 coal, and we price it at 0 cents. I said, why? He said, because we do know we are now going to be the last molecule, last electron onto the system, and the marginal clearing price will be somewhere about 3 to 4 cents, and that's where we recover most of our costs. And we can't afford to shut it down because the cost is going to be a lot higher, and we can't price it at 3 cents because we can't afford to shut it down. So we do know that it's going to be varying between 3.5 to 4.5, or at that time it was much higher, but that was a 2008, 2007 time frame. But otherwise, so you see, if you have someone who doesn't have a stake, who doesn't have a shareholder, who's out there to make sure he remains in business, if he is in the business, he's in the business of creating value for himself and the other shareholders. He doesn't have any blank checks, somebody else writing blank checks. So the private sector has to satisfy all stakeholders.
The taxpayer isn't writing the blank check.
So I think this is where we really need to think about. So the grid, as it is, we talk about the glory days of WAPDA, we talk about the glory days of NTDC, and we talk about all the glory days of how great we were.
Last century.
We don't talk about how great we can be. So if the conversation can be future oriented, I think things will be much different than what they are.
So I think that's the thing, taxpayer backstopping all losses. that is where the buck stops. It's at the taxpayer, and the taxpayer cannot backstop it anymore. So eventually, that is going to lead to higher debt and higher fiscal costs, and that just leads to a bad spiral. Which
There should be a club of what 38.5% tax people. They should be given some sort of a watch.
that's
Then
basic.
you're paying a 38.5,
No,
so that should be like, you should be able to social status. Oh, this guy is the
so I mean,
as a salaried people,
coming to
38.5% should be a watch. Eh?
so the interesting bit here is I actually looked at the distribution of various tax rates, marginal tax rates in different economies. So it's not a normal distribution. The highest tax rate, you've got the top 2% of the people in the highest tax slab. In our case, it's more of a straight line. 25, 25, 25, 25%. So you in the highest tax bracket, almost 20% of your taxpayers are in the highest tax bracket. So
modified
there is
distribution.
no distribution curve. It's just a straight line at this point. And I think that is really what the problem is at this point. One of the many problems out there. So coming to baseload, we talked about we really need power consuming baseload industry. Considering Pakistan's competitive advantage or comparative advantage, we may not have to agree or disagree with these terms here. What are the key industries that can be set up to either completely utilize that base load and actually convert into some kind of export earning as well through more forward integration?
So you see, any economy that has grown, like the, the the metals, right? If you look at it globally, the iron ore was found in Australia and other places, and all the steel mills were in the US, Canada, northern European countries as well. And as they moved up, because they want to move up the value chain as well, so the base metals didn't offer them the value. So we had a rust belt in Midwest of America because all these the steel factories moved to Japan first, and then we've talked about Nippon Steel and everybody else, and then they moved on to some of them. I mean, the energy guzzling industries moved to the Middle East, but most of them moved to China, Inner Mongolia, Shanxi, a lot of places you've been, right? So similarly happened to the aluminum space as well. Similarly, it happened to chemical industries as well. DuPont dominated the Midwest, and then they started pushing it out. Same thing in Germany and Europe. So they started doing a lot of those chemical plants, which required a lot more manpower. They were manpower intensive, labor intensive, and also energy guzzling as well. So I think these are the areas, because I think we are at a great place that China has now become what America and Europe did in the 20th century. They are going to go, they are competing with AI, they are competing in EVs, they are competing in cybersecurity, they are competing in the defense industries. I don't think they are interested in base industries anymore. I think they would like to look at the partners that they can actually put up these factories in partnership, do the technology transfer. There's not a lot of technology transfer. We as a country have a challenge. We are a 250 million population. Yes, AI is great. All the technology, all the leapfrogging is great, but we need to gainfully employ this workforce. And for that, you need to have those industries which help you climb that ladder, which others have done it before us. East Asia has done it. Indonesia has done it. Malaysia has done it. Thailand has done it. We can all have differing view whether that worked and there were crises. But I think we are at an export value, we are very low onto that. I think until and unless we increase our exports. So these are some of the industries that I can think from top of my head, but I think that will require an industrial policy, and an industrial policy which is time proof in terms of or event proof rather. And I think I a lot of times I think about what kind of an industrial policy. At this point in time, I think I have come to believe that there are two things, basic human rights or universal services, that if we can offer, really people of this country will take care of it. One is the health, the other is education. At this point in time, our best export is manpower. Just imagine the value creation or value addition that you're going to get from the yarn to apparel might take, but if you can have a person educated and healthy, he might actually, rather than earning 3,000 dirhams or 3,000 euros for a job in Europe or Middle East, if he moves to 5,000 dirhams and 5,000 euros, remittance has been the greatest export in terms of export dollars that you get. In terms of the manpower goes there, they send money back home. We've talked about it. I think that is because at the end of the day, somebody is going to do those jobs as well somewhere, right? And the reason people from Pakistan go and work in Middle East and in Europe is because they are willing to do the work which others have moved up the value chain because they're more educated and they want to progress. And that's where we have to start as well. Similarly, on the industry part, we have to look at it. The industries that people are exiting, the large base industries, and which will consume electricity, and that will offer us a base load as well, so that our electrical grid is stable as well. So we will have to look at those two things because they also employ a lot of people at the end of the day. And I think when you are deindustrializing, you cannot be a marketplace for everybody to dump. That's not going to get you out of this economic stagnation as we found ourselves.
I think on remittances, there is absolutely full agreement there on education and health. That's a different topic altogether. But what's really happened is, I would say, remittance is more of a Dutch disease at this point, where you got so many remittances coming in, which is great, but that just means more consumption. And that remittance is not being reallocated towards more investment or more industry or more actually generating productive growth in the economy. Again, that's absence of policy more than anything else.
That is true, but I've been on the planes and I randomly have a conversation with the person sitting next to me because it is always something to learn, right? You don't know this complete stranger. He might give you. I was with someone who explained me the shoe industry completely.
Yeah.
I was with someone who was doing educational advisory.
Yeah, that's what I do.
So
with you,
and think about it, because if somebody is in the central Punjab rural area, he's seen his cousin go to, let's say, Spain or
Barcelona.
France, right? I mean, any place, right?
Yeah.
And he has been able to earn 3,000 euros. At this point in time, he's going to leave this country anyway.
I think that's great.
So you
Nothing wrong
read
with
to, and Dutch disease, there are many other things, many low-hanging fruits that the country needs to do. So yes, it is feeding that Dutch disease, but I think I still want to, the chances of us correcting that, I don't know, are less than basically at least getting better remittances.
I think
At
that's the
least it will
point.
give us the runway as well.
Get better remittances and convert that into more productive output. That's the whole value chain that needs to be followed, rather than just get remittances and consume your way.
And that's
or
what I'm
whatever.
saying. So then you have to base industries which are focused onto the exports as well. Like, I was just this morning, I was just joking with someone that, people make fun of me why you talk about smelters. The Ford F-150 production has stalled because the aluminum plant in upstate New York caught fire. Now they're looking at alternatives. So, if you're going to have industry in this country, any sort of manufacturing other than very, very basic 5 or 6 export sectors that you and I have grown up hearing, we want to diversify into the light engineering products, you will need base metals, you will need steel, you will need aluminum, you will need chemicals, you would need a lot of other things as well. The best or the most complex chemical plant in your country cannot be a refinery and a fertilizer plant only. It can be much more industrial chemicals that you produce. It can be food grade and agri grade and pharma grade. Ingredients as well. It cannot be just basic stuff. That's how I look at it. So I think we don't produce a lot of basic chemicals. We don't produce a lot of basic materials. And if we are going to grow and if we are going to be on that path, either we have to be very efficient in conversion, in our operation, and that again will go back to, do we have the best engineers? Do we have the best workforce? Do we have the most efficient, industrial operations? So that's how it is.
So do we have the right workforce for all of this?
Well,
or what needs to be done to get to that level?
Yeah, I think I believe in a small steps. The problem is that we have a mega disease rather than a Dutch disease. anything and everything we want to talk about is the world's biggest, the best, and all of that. Really, the world is moved by the mediocre and the average as well, right? That's why they're called average, right? So that's the strong part. So yes and no, right? We are not able to retain our best, and we are not able to train the others who can be strong performers as well or can contribute. I think look at our IT industry. It has grown and it has been resilient regardless of whatever we did. There were educational institutions, they were not the best of class by world standard, but the same people can compete with the best educated as well, freelancers and others, right? We have some of the entrepreneurs have done the best in the world as well, and they've been in examples. So you see, I think let's not have perfect be the enemy of the good. I think good enough is good enough.
Yeah,
that's what I really think. You got to start somewhere. You cannot say that I'll have perfect ingredients, perfect ecosystem, perfect environment, and then I will start working.
Yeah.
You know what it is? It's a perfect excuse for procrastination. That's where you are.
That's excellent point. You know, just get moving, just get something done. That's it. All right. So just one final thing on electric mobility. Yes. I think one thing you're aware. I've been doing a lot of this. I'm very bullish on electric mobility. We talked about electrification. I think one thing that can really change a lot of things and eventually lead to better households, higher household incomes, and lead to better environmental outcomes overall, largely through market-oriented measures, is electric mobility. How does electric mobility work out in Pakistan? What do you see are the green shoots here?
So you see, I was having a conversation with someone, and every time, because we are associated with one of the top, or actually the top brands in the world as well, which has done a lot in the mobility space. May there be buses, may there be cars, and offer the great product as well. But there are others who've done well. And I said, literally, before us, the brand that which did well was because it was delivering value to the customer, right? I mean, in terms of the fuel economy. It is not EV, it is hybrid, which is not purely the new energy vehicle. Similarly, that's something. So the customer rewards the value.
Yeah.
And that will happen when we go to the two-wheelers as well. And we need to really figure it out that this doling out of subsidy for 5,000 bikes is not going to cut it. Doling out cash for electric buses is not going to be. The better roads, the stable policies, and a long-term vision, which is the domain, purely the domain of the governments and the state. If you do that, there'll be enough people who will come, and you will see better private buses running on these roads in Karachi. If we are a better, in Lahore, Islamabad, Multan, and everywhere. If you enable, you have to provide an enabling environment. If you were to look at, we think about ML1 and everything, I think we really need to, at this point in time, seriously start thinking about electrification of trains. Yeah. You really need to think about how the metros and others can be enabled, or PPP model, or whichever model, because you have to, because the population size in the cities has become so large that moving them by roads is not possible anymore. I think you need to have a multimodal transportation system in every city.
Which is electrified.
Electrified to some extent, and then some people still want to be the gas guzzlers, or they still love that sound of the ICE engine. They can have it. But I think masses, female participation in employment increases, a lot more employment opportunities come about, a lot of engineering jobs and other things. So, so your industrial, there's a spillover effect. Let's assume you were to run trains. Then all these train providers will open workshops here. You won't have to look towards Turkey or China or Hong Kong or Thailand and other places, right? So there will be more localization as well. There will be some work that will be done here as well. So you could be part of that global value chain. If all the buses in the country, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000, 100,000 are electric, there'll be an incentive for them to come here and put up those plants as well, as they're doing in the cars as well. The bikes, if there is a value proposition, if there is an offtake, there'll be companies which will come and they'll say swapping stations instead of the charging at home. There'll be solutions. We saw if Uber can work in America, Uber worked in Pakistan, Kareem worked in Pakistan. There was another competition which came and bumped them out.
Right, just
Nobody,
competition.
nobody came to solve their problem. They couldn't survive in the market space. Sorry,
Someone
you
else
go
came.
out. Somebody else took that space. We didn't go back to metros or white
Yeah.
cabs completely, right? So we did not. We went to somebody else capturing that space, and in the process, the customer is more educated, and the
Whatever is
suppliers are-
delivering value for the customer.
So I'm saying,
like you said earlier.
so e-mobility, I think our problem is because we think that there is a shortcut to it, so we throw the subsidy and
Throw
everything.
money at the problem.
Yeah, so I think at this point in time, but we really need to have a clarity. We can't flip-flop. I think I hear that there has been some issues on to what type of NEV policy, whether we want to have a national tariff policy and all of that. You don't want to be a junkyard of the world, very honestly. New companies coming in have shown to the world that our customer deserves the best product.
Yeah.
And he can be given value, delivered value at the price points that he can afford. You don't need used cars from advanced economies because you don't want Hafiz centers and Rainbow centers full of used junkyard computers. Now, very few people will use the used phones, so to speak. Everybody wants to buy a new phone, right? And because these companies have a responsibility to sustainably dispose of their used cars, in order to do that, they want to send it to your way so that it is your problem. This is also a thinking that the battery companies are doing, how to basically end of life, or how do you dispose them off safely as well. That's a responsibility. Soon enough, you will see the used battery market, used solar panel market.
Yeah, I'm sure
You
it's
don't want to
already
be a
there, just
junkyard.
recycling
You
it at this
don't
point.
want to use your precious dollars for someone to helping
import them.
someone clean their wardrobe. That's all I'll say.
I mean-
That's a really, the trade balance needs to be looked at, what you are trying to import.
To be fair, we're the largest used clothes importer in the world as of this point. We pack it and export it. So there's that. I think, Kamran, excellent conversation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the insights. And we would like you to come again anytime soon.
I hope I wasn't too wavered, but thank you for
No, no,
having me.
this-
Because
this
it's just,
was wonderful.
It's just a conversation, so I didn't have any, particular thought.
no,
but
this
I
is
just
exactly-
sharing whatever extempore I can think
Yeah,
of.
this
But I
is-
think it's something that I think about not as a CEO, but as a Pakistani who passionately believes that our well-being and our prosperous future is linked with this country. So we have to at least look at things how they can be better,
No.
and that's the only way that they will. At least you talk about it,
Yeah.
and you engage constructively to do. We can do creative destruction. We can do constructive discussion at least.
Or not destruction at this point. I think coming to creative destruction, I'm just going to extend it. My favorite example here is, I always say, pizza is the ultimate comparative product in Pakistan. It was introduced. The government did not set a fixed price for it. This is exactly how much you're going to slice for. Now you get a pizza in a tier 3 or tier 4 city, and a pie can cost anywhere between from 200 rupees to 4,000 rupees. There is a product available at every price point. Jobs created, restaurants created, localized, everything happened just because you allowed the market to work out. Now if the government decided, you know what, I'm going to fix the price of pizza, no, it would have been the end of it all.
Yeah, that's exactly a lot of. I think sometimes, we have to know what we don't know. That's really what we need to focus on. If we don't know, let's not try to act out that we do know,
Yeah.
because more likely than not, you will ruin it as it is.
Yeah, you will ruin it. That's
So
true.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kiran. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to see you next time.